These three are the highly, I would say, highly Trumpy nominations, and I don't know if all of them are going to get across the line, actually, because the Senate, as we've seen this week, is a little bit more independent-minded, and it might just block one of them.
Matt Gaetz, he's now the Attorney General of the Trump administration. Who is he?
Well, he's the nomination for Attorney General. We might come back to whether he's actually going to make it across the line.
That's interesting.
But he is a firebrand Florida congressman who has continually been the most ultra loyal, one of the most ultra loyal members of the House in defending Donald Trump in all matters. His loyalty was such that he even nominated Trump for Speaker of the House after he was the one who instigated the ouster of Kevin McCarthy as Speaker and caused an enormous ruction in the House of Representatives that seemed to indicate the way that the MAGA wing, of which he is a notable representative, were really just a wrecking ball during the last couple of years in the House of Representatives for the Republican group. He's friendly with Don Jr., who's been a big mover behind the scenes in putting forward some of these unusual and surprising candidates. And he's highly controversial because, for various reasons, not only because he's an outspoken defender of Trump, but because he's had his own ethics problems. The House Ethics Committee's been investigating him for illicit drug use, for sexual relations with an underage girl. This inquiry was almost complete, but may now never see the light of day, as he promptly resigned from the House on Wednesday after Trump nominated him for Attorney General.
So by becoming Attorney General, if he does become Attorney General, he's no longer in the House, and the leader of the House as well. If you're not part of the House, the Ethics Committee can't report on you. So we've got this extraordinary situation where this most senior judicial figure escapes oversight into potentially bad behavior by virtue of becoming that judicial figure.
Being nominated for it, that's right, because what happens next is that when the new Senate meets in January and Trump is sworn in, then his nominees, like Matt Gaetz, will have to go before confirmation hearings. They need a simple majority in the Senate to be confirmed as a member of the cabinet, and the Republicans have a 53-47 majority. However, we already had two senators on the Republican side come out with deep concerns about Matt Gaetz today. They're two familiar dissenting voices. Lisa Murkowski from Alaska said, we need a serious candidate, and she didn't mean Matt Gaetz. And Susan Collins from Maine said she was shocked. And so that doesn't bode well for his chances. And there's been a lot of muttering among some of the others, because the Senate is really the last bastion of the remnants of the traditional Republican Party, actually, that Trump has completely taken over just about everywhere else. And that was shown when they had a leadership election and they elected a senator called John Thune, who wasn't Trump's choice. Trump wanted a senator from Florida called Rick Scott, who was the first one eliminated in a three-way secret ballot. So that just shows you that there's a little bit of independent-mindedness in the Senate that doesn't bode well, I think, for Matt Gaetz. It's going to be a big fight to get him confirmed.
And Trump doesn't have any. It's an interesting point that there's no real party discipline in that way, is there, with Trump? I mean, Trump as the president is this figure to one side and above, and he can control patronage as he's doing, obviously. But presumably, there's not much of a stick he can wield towards an elected Republican senator. And I mean, unless the argument would be, if you're not in with Trump, you might not get re-elected.
Well, that's a very powerful argument, because they're insulated by the fact that they're only up for election once every 6 years. However, if Trump throws his weight behind a primary challenger, then you're on a very sticky wicket and it's going to be a big struggle. And that's what will happen, of course, if Trump feels that somebody's crossed him. It's happened many times in the Trump era, that he openly endorses a challenger to the established candidate, and quite often that means the challenger is elected. So you have to weigh up pretty carefully and know your electorate very well before you make a stand against Trump's wishes at the moment.
Is there a Florida mafia developing here? Because Trump, I know, is a New Yorker, but he lives in Mar-a-Lago when he's not in the White House. Matt Gaetz is from Florida. Marco Rubio has been confirmed as Secretary of State. He's from Florida. Is that a real center of power? Is this the Floridian White House, do we think?
Yeah, I think so, because the chief of staff is a woman called Susie Wiles, who came up in Florida. Again, she's not a Florida native like Trump, but she's cut her teeth politically as an advisor in Florida for Rick Scott when he became a senator on his campaigns, and for Ron DeSantis until they fell out, and latterly with Trump. She's credited with, in the 2016 election, helping Trump to win the state of Florida, which was then seen as a swing state. And the fact that it's now, I think, plus 13, was it, in the election? It was a very comfortable win for the Republicans, and the Floridians who are backing Trump want to do that for America. They've converted Florida into a pretty safe red state, and that's what Susie Wiles is credited with.
It's also a state famous for the dirtiness of its politics. I think it's fair to say, Florida. You read, it's regarded as a place where money talks, and if you can survive in Florida, people think. I mean, it's a pretty tough place to do politics, I think, isn't it, Florida?
Yeah, but we've seen the money in the general election was largely with the Democrats, and the Republican insurgency. Once again, the Trump insurgency overcame that spending. But I take your point that it is seen as a bit of a hotbed of intrigue. Hence, as I mentioned, Susie Wiles had a big dust up and fallout with Ron DeSantis after basically making him. She was seen as the force, because she knew Florida so well, getting Ron DeSantis elected for the first time as governor.
We've got another eye-popping pick. You have to explain why this is eye-popping, and then we'll get your overall view of this, because you always reward your allies. This is the nature of American politics, the nature of all politics, but especially American politics, perhaps. Tulsi Gabbard, who's she?
Right, so she is a former congresswoman from Hawaii. What's interesting about her is that she was a member of Congress as a Democrat, and she fell out of love with the party, and it began to distance itself from her because she was really out of step with increasingly anti-war views, very much against the war in Ukraine, wants immediate ceasefire and negotiations to end it. Famously fell out with Hillary Clinton in 2019, who branded Gabbard a Russian asset because Tulsi Gabbard ran in that 2019 primary when Joe Biden eventually came through to be the presidential candidate, and she was boosted by a number of Russian bot sites.
And she's said to be pro-Assad and pro-Russian, is how I've seen her described it on social media. So it might not be entirely true, but that's the knock on her. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's sympathetic to Putin's claims in Ukraine. I think it's not a stretch to say that. She pro-Assad. Well, she organised her own unilateral trip to go and see Assad in Syria in 2017. Much to everybody's surprise, she turned up in Damascus, so for talks, which had a lot of people scratching their heads at the time. But she's consistently said that she wants to bring peace to the Middle East, and that was her whole campaign. And it fits in with the Trump worldview, and she's been moving more towards his orbit quite rapidly this year. Only been an open supporter of Trump since August, actually. There's echoes of Elon Musk here a bit, a very late convert to the cause, being dramatically promoted and featuring right at the heart of the operation now. Trump made her the co-chair of his transition, which is the operation to bring in the whole new administration. So she's become absolutely central, and she's rather popular on social media with a lot of Americans because she is very anti-establishment and independent-minded.
And now she's
but
the director
very much in a Trumpy vein.
Yeah, now she's the director of national intelligence. Just before you go, David, your overall thoughts are these are as colourful as expected. They're not perhaps as moderate as he could have gone. Is that fair? Just your overall, in a couple of words, your assessment of what the Trump administration looks like at this point.
Yes, he started off with a couple of rather conventional picks, and he seemed to be carrying on with that, with Marco Rubio named as the nomination for the Secretary of State, a very well-established senator, the vice chair of the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, the sort of person who normally gets nominated for these kind of jobs. And now he's completely pulled the rug out from everyone's feet of expectations by nominating not just Tulsi Gabbard, who's got very little formal experience of intelligence, to be the head of national intelligence, and Matt Gaetz, who's got almost no experience as a prosecutor, to be the top legal prosecutor in the country. He's also nominated a Fox News presenter called Pete Hegseth as Defense Secretary, who's a major in the National Guard with very little senior military command experience, although he's very outspoken on Fox News against the woke influence in the military that he wants to turn back.
So there's a bit of everything, and a bit of the Trumpiness is a word you've used. I think that the Trumpiness is very much there.
These three are the highly, I would say, highly Trumpy nominations, and I don't know if all of them are going to get across the line, actually, because the Senate, as we've seen this week, is a little bit more independent-minded, and it might just block one of them.
Let's see what happens.
David, we'll see what happens.
We will. David, always interesting to speak to you. Thank you so much for talking us through all that.